Chapter 33. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 50 and 5 years in Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, after the abominations of the nations, whom the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. For he built again the high places which Hezekiah his father had broken down, and he reared up altars for the Baalim, and made Asheroth, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served them. And he built altars in the house of the Lord, whereof the Lord said, In Jerusalem shall my name be forever. And he built altars for all the host of heaven in the two courts of the house of the Lord. And he also made his children to pass through the fire in the valley of the son of Hinnom. And he practiced soothsaying, and used enchantments, and practiced sorcery, and appointed them that divined by a ghost, or a familiar spirit. He brought much evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him. He set the graven image of the idol which he made in the house of God, of which God said to David and to Solomon his son, In this house, and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, will I put my name forever. Neither will I any more remove the foot of Israel from off the land which I have appointed for your fathers, if only they will observe to do all that I have commanded them, even all the law, and the statutes, and the ordinances by the hand of Moses. And Manasseh made Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem to err. So they did evil more than did the nations, whom the Lord destroyed before the children of Israel. And the Lord spoke to Manasseh and to his people, but they gave no heed. Wherefore the Lord brought upon them the captains of the host of the king of Assyria, who took Manasseh with hooks, and bound him with fetters, and carried him to Babylon. And when he was in distress, he besought the Lord his God, and humbled himself greatly before the God of his fathers. And he prayed unto him, and he was entreated of him, and heard his supplication, and brought him back to Jerusalem, and to his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew that the Lord, he was God. Now after this he built an outer wall to the city of David, on the west side of Gihon, in the valley, even to the entrance of the fish gate. And he compassed about Ophel, and raised it up a very great height. And he put captains of the army in all the fortified cities of Judah. And he took away the strange gods and the idol out of the house of the Lord, and all the altars that he had built in the mount of the house of the Lord, and in Jerusalem, and cast them out of the city. And he built up the altar of the Lord, and offered thereon sacrifices of peace offerings and of thanksgiving, and commanded Judah to serve the Lord, the God of Israel. Nevertheless, the people did sacrifice still in the high places, but only unto the Lord their God. Now the rest of the acts of Manasseh, and his prayer unto his God, and the words of the seers that spoke to him in the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, behold, they are written among the acts of the kings of Israel. His prayer also, and how God was entreated of him, and all his sin and his transgression, and the places wherein he built high places, and set up the Asherim and the graven images, before he humbled himself, behold, they are written in the history of the seers. So Manasseh slept with his fathers, and they buried him in his own house. And Amon, his son, reigned in his stead. And Amon was 22 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 2 years in Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, as did Manasseh his father. And Amon sacrificed unto the graven images, which Manasseh his father had made, and served them. And he humbled not himself before the Lord, as Manasseh his father had humbled himself. But this same Amon became guilty more and more, and his servants conspired against him, and put him to death in his own house. But the people of the land slew all them that had conspired against King Amon. And the people of the land made Josiah his son king in his stead. All right, let's go back up to verse 1. And remembering yesterday, God had brought Sennacherib up against Jerusalem. Sennacherib is that king of Assyria, that Asher, that alternative altar I refer to it as. And Sennacherib is this one who had multiplied the sins by the lesser light, or by this understanding of the darkness that was put over them in the beginning. And Hezekiah stood up against Sennacherib with the faith of God, and we'll find out God did deliver Jerusalem out of the hand of Sennacherib, out of Rabshakeh's hand and all the host of his armies. And he was slain according to the words of the prophet. But now we'll find that Hezekiah, later on, the kings of Babylon, these ambassadors of Babylon, or these ambassadors of confusion, would come to Hezekiah, and he would show them all that was in the kingdom of God. And this would be an error to Hezekiah, as it was prophesied by Isaiah, who was the speaker. And Hezekiah would sleep with his fathers, we would find, and Manasseh, his son, would have reigned in his stead. And that's where we're picking it up in verse 1. And Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 50 and 5 years in Jerusalem. And Manasseh was a young boy when he began to reign. Manasseh is these ones that cause to forget, the cause to forget. He was 12 years old, and 12 is understanding. That's the law, and 2, that's to witness these greater understandings of old, because we'll find out that God is once again making an example when he begins to reign. And he reigned for 50 and 5 years in Jerusalem. 50 and 5, because 5 tenths is grace. There's grace in the law, and grace in the greater understandings of these peaceful teachings, even these teachings that God is using to teach the people, the ones he gave from the beginning. 2, and he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, after the abominations of the nations, whom the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. And he did that which was evil. Just, we'll find out, after the abominations of all the other nations that were around them, and that is to go back and worship these Baalim, that the Lord God said, "You shall have no other God but me. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other, neither shall you make you an image." But that's what these Baalim were. 3, for he built again the high places which Hezekiah his father had broken down, and he reared up altars for the Baalim, and made Asheroth, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served them. And all the host of heaven, which God had given all the other nations to worship. See, they went after doing these things, and this was the example God had made even in the beginning to the ones that was in the land prior to these Hebrews, that when they came into the land, see, the ones that was driven out from before the people, these would be the ones that was of the descendants of Noah. And he built these high places, these Baalim, because this is what the ones had done before them, and worship, and made these Asheroth. These Asheroth are a plural for these Ashers, and these are them alternative altars, these alternative places to worship, these places of these other not gods that the men would make with their own hands, and this would be something that was put upon them by God for their sin. God said, "You shall not do this thing." And he built altars in the house of the Lord, whereof the Lord said, "In Jerusalem shall my name be forever." And he built he built these altars in the house of God. And that's the place where God put his name forever, where he said, "I'll put my name forever." See, but there was no understanding. And these altars where they would go in, and these alternative places, these that God said you shall not have, you only have one altar. He also made his children to pass through the fire in the valley of the son of Hinnom. And he practiced soothsaying, and used enchantments, and practiced sorcery, and appointed them that divined by ghost or a familiar spirit. He wrought much evil in the sight of the Lord, and to provoke him. Because God's making an example. God's making an example, see. And he does provoke the Lord greatly. He causes his children to pass through the fire in this valley. That's that low place. That's the son of Hinnom. And Hinnom means lamentations. It's a place of wailing and crying, because there they offered their children up to these not gods. And he practiced soothsaying and this sorcery. These are enchantments and sorcery and all this divining by ghosts. This is all wickedness before the Lord. The Lord said, you shall not do this. 7. And he set up graven image of the idol which he made in the house of God, of which God said to David and to Solomon his son, in the house in Jerusalem which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel will I put my name forever. And he set up a graven image of the idol which he made in the house of God. He made the thing, and he set it up there, and he was probably made himself a priest of some sort to this image that he had made and taken up a chief seat there. This graven image, this thing that's hewn out, see, and where he would divine and practice sorcery and do all these things that God said you shall not do. Remember, he slew Saul because Saul sought not the Lord, but sought after a ghost. 8. Neither will I any more remove the foot of Israel from off the land which I have appointed for your fathers, if only they will observe to do all that I commanded them, even all the law and the statutes and the ordinances by the hand of Moses. And God said, neither will I any more remove the foot of Israel from off the land which I appointed to for your fathers. This inheritance that he gives, see, that's that land, that's a place of understanding is where that's at. If only they will observe to do all that I commanded, if, there's that little 2-letter word, it's the biggest word in the world, if only, see, they will observe to do all that I've commanded them. That's the qualifier. Even all the law and the statutes and the ordinances by the hand of Moses, by the works of Moses, this one who was drawn out. See, you have to obey all the ordinances, the laws, the statutes. 9. And Manasseh made Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem to err, so that they did evil more than did the nations, whom the Lord destroyed before the children of Israel. And Manasseh, this one that causes to forget, made Judah, those are praisings, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, place of peaceful teachings, to error by these high places, by these understandings that he was putting into the land. So they did evil more than did the nations, whom the Lord destroyed before the children of Israel, whom the Lord had drove out, these descendants of Noah, who had already polluted, who come from that place where God destroyed. See, God constantly making examples over and over and over. He's God. There is no other. 10. And the Lord spoke to Manasseh and to his people, but they gave no heed. And God spoke, sending, of course, his prophets before and often, as he always does. These warnings he always sends to the one that causes to forget, and to his people, those he's trying to salvage. And 11. Wherefore the Lord brought upon them the captains of the host of the king of Assyria, who took Manasseh with hooks and bound him with fetters and carried him to Babylon. And that's why God brought upon them the captains, these rulers over the host, these armies of this Molech of Assyria, that Asher, that alternative altar, see, that Molech, that one that rules. He's the king of Assyria. And he took Manasseh with hooks, and Manasseh's those that cause to forget, and those that have forgotten who God is, with hooks. And I believe the King James says he bound him into briars and thorns, and these things, what they did was they put a hook through you, and then they would wrap a chain or a rope or something and tie one to another, and they carried him to Babylon, and that's that place of confusion. Babylon means Babel. It means it's confused. That confusion, or those that are confused. 12. And when he was in distress, he besought the Lord his God, and humbled himself greatly before the God of his fathers. And when he was in distress, and God had brought him in fetters and carried him to Babylon and put him in a cage, see, he realized, God must be punishing me. It's a little late, and he humbles himself. We'll find out greatly before God of his fathers. Greatly before the Lord he humbles himself. 13. And he prayed unto him, and he was entreated of him, and he heard his supplication, and brought him back to Jerusalem, into his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew that the Lord, he was God, And he prayed unto God, and he turned. See, he turned in the lowly place. He turned there unto God, and God heard him. God heard his prayer, just like he promised. And he brought him back to Jerusalem. He brought him back to that place of peaceful teaching, into his kingdom, into that dominion of the king which God gave. See, God loaned that to the king to watch over in justice. He said, keep my law, keep my people. Justice and righteousness. And Manasseh knew that the Lord, he was God. He knew God was. Then, 14, now after this, he built an outer wall to the city of David on the west side of Gihon in the valley, even to the entrance of the fish gate, and he compassed about Ophel, and raised it up very great height. And he put captains of the army in all the fortified cities of Judah. And we'll see that he's going to fortify. He's fortifying just like all the others do. And he builds an outer wall. This is a wall in addition to the wall that's on the inside. This is an outer wall. This is an outer place of separation to that city of David. And that place that has guard of the beloved, that he's the chosen one, on the west side. And the west side is that way where the sun goes down. It's the way of darkening, and it's that where it's made plain of Gihon. And Gihon is that which is bursting forth, even those waters, in that valley. And that valley is that low place, that even the place of flesh, even to the entrance at the fish gate. And that fish gate where they would bring in, that would be toward the northwest there at the fish gate. That's that place where they would bring these fish, and that represents the life of the sea, and this that's found in it, or the life in the waters. Either way we want to look at that. It's the gate of the fish, and that's where they are judged. That's that place of the judgment of all the life of the waters, and that's of understanding. And he compassed it about Ophel. And he compassed about Ophel, or went around Ophel also with a wall. See, we'll see. He raised it up to a very great height. Ophel just means a mound. And if we had a big flat plain, and we had a little hump out in the middle of it, we would call that Ophel. And that it's a place where we can set up a position to fortify, even so we can see a long distance. And that's what Ophel is, that where we can, it's an observation point. And he raised it up to a very great height. And he put captains of the army in the fortified cities of Judah, and all these rulers over his forces. And he would fortify these places of God, even in praising. 15, and he took away the strange gods and the idol out of the house of the Lord, and all the altars that he built in the mount of the house of the Lord, and in Jerusalem, cast them out of the city. And we'll see he's going back through now, and he's taken away all these strange gods, all these not gods, all these gods God give all the other nations, see, to rule over them. And the idols, these are those images they make, these things they whittle out. Whatever they want to whittle out, this image they make it out of, and he takes them out of the house of God, where they had stood them up, and all the altars, these alternative places of worship, these alternative places of slain. An altar is a place where you're slain. See, you're slain, and this is a similitude. It's where they slay that which is flesh, they slay that which is spirit, that he had built in the mount, the house of the Lord, and in Jerusalem, in that place of peaceful teaching. See, and he cast them out of the city. 16, and he built up the altar of the Lord, and he offered thereon sacrifices of peace offerings and of thanksgiving, and commanded Judah to serve the Lord, the God of Israel. And we'll see, he turns back, and he builds up God's altar as he reestablishes it. You see, that built, he reestablishes that altar of the Lord, and he offers thereon sacrifices, even these free will offerings, those things that make atonement, free will, because you have this covenant that God gave, see, and that's what it's a symbol. If you understand who God is, you've come under the judgment of God, you fell under the law of God, God's made a believer out of you, and you've turned, see, and this is the thanksgiving. That's that thanksgiving, see, when you understand, and understanding is what you get, Judah, to serve the Lord, the God of Israel. 17. Nevertheless, the people did sacrifice still in the high places, but only unto the Lord their God. Nevertheless, see, nevertheless, people did sacrifice still in these high places, in these exalted places. See, in these places that they made for all these alternative worship. They had these altars, these Asherah, these altar there. This evergreen goes with it to show that it's that which is forever, but only unto the Lord their God, as if that makes it okay. See, that does not make it okay. That does not. It's a violation of law. God said, you shall not do this. God said, that which I cannot stand. God says, you shall not do unto me as they do unto their gods, for after every abomination have they done. 18. Now the rest of the acts of Manasseh, and his prayer unto his God, and the words of the seers that spoke to him in the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, behold, they are written among the acts of the kings of Israel. And the rest of the acts, these things that Manasseh did, this one it caused to forget. And his prayer unto God, how he turned, we'll find. And the words of the seers that spoke to him in the name of the Lord. These ones that tried to warn him, these ones that tried to tell him, these envisioners, these ones that knew what God was saying. They spoke to him in the name of the Lord. We'll find out he didn't listen in the beginning. The God of Israel, behold, they are written in the Acts of the Kings of Israel. We can find them there written. That's why they wrote them down there, so we could use them, so they'd be there. We could use these to gain some understanding. 9 is prayer also, and how God was entreated of him, and all his sin and his transgressions, and the places wherein he built high places, and set up the Asherim and the graven images, before he humbled himself. Behold, they are written in the history of the seers. His prayers also, and how God was entreated of him. God listened. God listened to him, just like he promised. And when he turned, God was there waiting. God did not turn his face from him. All his sin and his transgression, everything he done. These places he built, these high places. He set up these Asherim, these things that represent that alternative altar. That's a similitude there of it. That way you could see it and know where to go. These graven images even were there. These things that men make. See, that's the works of men. That's the words of men, their understandings. These was this before he humbled himself, because he turned. See, Manasseh turned. Behold, they are written in the history of the seers, and we'll find that this is part of it. So Manasseh, 20. So Manasseh slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the house. They buried him in his own house. And Amon, his son, reigns in his stead. And we'll find out Manasseh, he's done with his reign. He's done with his period, this time he was appointed. See, and they bury him there in his own house. He's buried in his own house. He's got his own place to be buried, because they didn't bury him in the field of the kings or the sepulchres of the kings. 21, and Mon is going to reign in his stead. Mon, 21, was 22 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 2 years in Jerusalem. And Amon is that master workman. He is that master craftsman, that master workman. And he's going to reign for 2 years, and we're going to witness this understanding in Jerusalem, that place of peaceful teachings. He was 22 years old when he began to reign. And there's going to be, we can witness the law here, and there's redemption in it. And we can witness even the greater understandings of the old, which is the law God gave you in the beginning, 22. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, as did Manasseh his father. And Amon sacrificed unto all the graven images which Manasseh his father had made, and served them. And we'll find out. Amon, this master workman, he's going to worship and serve all these graven images, these things that his father had made. See, before he turned, these things. And he didn't humble himself, though, 23, and he humbled not himself before the Lord as Manasseh his father had humbled himself. But the same Ammon became guilty more and more. He didn't humble himself like Manasseh did. He didn't turn. See, and we'll find there's a little difference here. We'll be able to witness the difference. He didn't turn like Manasseh, this one that forgot who God was. He turned, see. But Ammon, that master workman, he became guilty more and more. 24. And his servants conspired against him, and they put him to death in his own house. And his servants, those that served him, they conspire against him in this work, and they put him to death in his own house. That's his own abode. We will find those that served him. 25. But the people of the land slew all them that had conspired against King Ammon. And the people of the land made Josiah, his son, king in his stead. And we'll find out the people of the land, they slay all those that served Ammon, that master workman, and they that had slain Ammon, and they make Josiah. Josiah is going to be the king now, and Josiah is this one that come forth from Ammon. He is that master workman. Josiah, this one whom is found by God, this one who is found of God, or God finds this one, and we'll find out what Josiah is going to do, because we're going to move forward to chapter 34, turn and return.